So this next hour, we're going to just go over shoulder stand, plow, and headstand. So Catherine has also taken some videos. That's kind of going to be a recap of this, and it will be up on the site. So I will let you guys know when that will be once they're up. But it's just going to be pretty much what we covered today anyway, if you want to refer back to it. So if we kind of go back to when we spoke about headless headstand, we spoke about why we do headless headstand as opposed to headstand in the different variation where your head is on the floor. We also spoke a little bit about shoulder stand. So today we're actually going to explore a bit, speak about how we can get into the pose, because they are poses that we actually come across quite often in yoga. Teachers will teach it, students may want to do it, and so it's nice that we also get involved. So the reason why we teach headless headstand is because there's no weight of the head on the floor. What are you looking for? Page, there's no page, just listen. So so when we have headless headstand, we don't have our head on the floor, so there's no pressure, I can say, on our head and our neck. We rely a lot on the strength of our arms, and so there's also the benefit of building strength in the upper body to hold yourself there. So the one benefit of it is, of course, strength. However, for a lot of people, headstand and shoulder stand feels fine. We can't say these poses are bad. No pose is inherently bad. We just say we don't like it. We may not like it because of this, and some students may feel the same way. So it's not something we teach here, but it might be something that you want to explore as well. So we'll start off with shoulder stand. So it's nice to kind of just explore it and also show how it can be taught in a structured way. So I want you guys to think about shoulder stand. If I look at when I'm coming up into a pose, one of the main things that happens in shoulder stand is I require my arms to move back behind me. Okay. So what is this movement in the shoulders? Sort of extension of what's happening in my shoulder blades when I move my hands back. They're squeezing together, but scapular retraction, okay? So what is required of me is I need to be able to take my arms back behind me and really squeeze my shoulder blades together to get my elbows almost underneath my body, but to really squeeze the back, okay? If I have that, then I can support that. So without this movement, or without that mobility, it can be a lot trickier for some students. So what's required in the body is a little bit of shoulder extension, but mostly scapular retraction in order to get my hands there. It's kind of that same thing we spoke about when we said we take our hands to reverse prayer. It can be tricky for people. So now we know if we cannot squeeze the shoulder blades back like that, it can impact the way students come up into shoulder blades. Okay. For you guys, what you can do is just swing around there and you guys can watch me from the side because you might not see it here. Okay. So what I want to do is if I know maybe I teach shoulder stand, whatever it is maybe, how else can I see whether students have this kind of mobility throughout the class? Where will I be able to see it? Yeah, bridge would be one. Can they maybe interlace their hands behind their back, or can they wiggle? Because once I interlace my hands, I kind of do like a little wiggle to get the shoulders close together behind the back. Where else can I see it? Reverse tabletop. Reverse tabletop? Yeah. Camel, maybe if you were teaching camel in the class, but most people were taking them back behind us, maybe even just interlacing. Maybe instead I just do a chair pose with the interlaced fingers and go, okay, if my students can't get their arms back, that may be something, if I'm teaching shoulder stand legs on, that's something that can implicate it or might have an effect on the pose. So I want you guys to gaze at how I come into the pose. So we generally come into shoulder stand from plow. So very similar position in terms of what's happening in the back, but plow requires more in terms of flexibility. Okay, so we move into plow so that we have our legs all the way over, then we can adjust the hands and then you move up to shoulder stand. So we'll really chat about plow first. When you guys are now very familiar with your pose analysis, we kind of look at strength, flexibility, and skill. So if I was coming in, we're all familiar with what plow looks like. Okay, if I was looking at plow, what kind of flexibility do you think would be required from the body? Hamstrings. And shoulders. Shoulder and spine. Spine. Okay, the spinal flexion. So if you look at my plow pose here, all right? So I'm coming from line. If you look at what happens in my back. So a lot of rounding in my back, and my legs are straight. So a lot of kind of flexibility required from the hamstrings. If you look at that shape, it's very similar to a forward fold. Okay, so I'm kind of just doing a forward fold upside down. Of course, it does look slightly different because of the orientation. So if we speak specifically just about the neck, maybe you don't see this if you want to come around, but I want you to just gaze at my neck. What kind of position is my neck in now? Neutral. Neutral. What kind of arch is neutral? Okay. Sorry, not a good question. All right, so neutral spine is a slightly more lordosis, which means you can see this. My neck is off the ground. It kind of makes a little arch. I can fit my hand under there. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to come into plow super slowly. I want you to see what happens.
On the ground.
Yeah, I can still squeeze my fingers through there. But do you see how it flattens out? Okay. So when I'm doing plow, I can also move further or closer, just as we've done with progressions and grading. The more I move my legs over, the more weight and load I'm taking backward. The less I move overhead, the more I can have my weight on my shoulders and my back. Okay. So if we come into plow, I come down to lie, have your legs where they are. There's a little bit of momentum I use to lift my hips up. I can support my pelvis, and I take my legs up and over. All right. So you see my elbows are slightly out to the side. When I get into here, I can interlace my fingers, give a little bit of a wiggle. I could have my hands on my back, bring my elbows in, and I'm supporting the weight. Well, I'm not supporting the weight, but my hands on my hips for a little bit of support. And maybe your legs go all the way up and over. Okay, mine doing quite well there. Okay, but if I had to use my hands as support, I can move slightly out and shift the weight. So they are moving more weight upwards into my upper back, a little bit of the neck. I mean, I can feel it. It's not too bad, but I can definitely feel a little bit of pressure there. But I can also move out, and you see how my hands are holding. Right, so I actually have more. I mean, my neck's pretty free. I can even lift my neck up. More of my weight is on my upper arms. Okay. Have you guys noticed that since I've come into this pose, I haven't looked at you guys once?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I'm moving and I've got load on my upper body, even a little bit on my neck, back of head, I don't want to be able to look. So when we teach shoulder stand, a lot of students will go up and then look and see what you're doing. Okay. So that's something to be mindful of is, are they doing that? Maybe just be alert to it. Okay. So if I do my plow pose, take my feet overhead, I can grade how much I want to take my legs forward and back, get my elbows nice and retracted or close towards one another, squeeze the shoulder blades together. Okay, so this is even like a little bit of a figure. I keep my gaze up, my hands are on my lower back. The more I can retract my shoulders, the more I can walk my hands up my back. Some students may be there. Okay, so we know there's kind of a range. If I was moving into, it is down. If I come into plow, I've got lots of options. I can bring my knees down, I can bend my knees, I can move it back. You see, I can kind of take it away from overhead and move it towards, just to show you the different range of it, okay? Moving into shoulder stand, I'll then move my hands into my upper back. Do you see how my brain's kind of like, it's like breathing is tricky here. Hands come up my back, I'm supporting as high as I can. For me, it's like slightly on my rib cage, and my feet go up. There, it's more weight over, it's not quite straight, my feet are going overhead. If I move my feet away from me, more weight goes onto my upper arms. Okay. Once again, I can keep my knees bent, have my legs straight. You could do lotus if I want to. Okay, whatever kind of movement you want to do. For me, I feel a lot more weight here on my upper arms than on my neck because I've taken the weight slightly back. Okay. And then to come out of it, I send my hips away from me. Can move back into plow. Hands come down. My hands are like brakes. Push into my hands. Slowly lower down. Okay. So that's just to have a look at shoulder stand. Any questions and plow? That's supported shoulder stand because I've got hands on my back. Okay. If I was doing unsupported shoulder stand, I would interlace my fingers just like I had in plow and take my legs up without having my hands on my back. It requires a lot more abdominal strength to hold the legs up there. Any questions about plow into shoulder stand? Either one of them? No. Yeah.
So obviously, like depending on your body and all of these things, it's something like it's difficult for me if I do that. Always found that my body feels fine, but I can't breathe. And I don't know if it's because my breathing is pushing into my neck or something. But do you stop when you feel pain, or do you stop when you're hungry?
Either.
So what Inka is saying is very valuable point. So when she comes up, it's like moving into a forward fold, but now I'm kind of inverted. Okay, so women, it's a real fact. If you've got larger breasts and they fall down, it can be a lot more constricted. It's going to get in the way. It's just the nature of the pose. So I would actually recommend just not going as far. Obviously, I want people to breathe in the pose. So my recommendation is if you can't breathe, come out.
Sometimes that's why because then it's not as, I mean, but actually
Yes,
going into
that.
flower the
Yeah.
toes then.
So feel what it's like now to bring the weight slightly back. You don't have your feet, but you got the support of the hands. So you're almost holding the pelvis slightly. Because I want you guys to tune in. Sometimes we just go up so quickly that we don't really take it slowly enough to feel that weight shift. And whether it is, does it feel fine for your neck and your shoulders? Can you actually retract the shoulders and get that support there before you come up? Okay. So that's a realistic point as well. If you're moving into plow, maybe just bend the knees and support the pelvis and give yourself space to breathe. But that's a realistic thing that students may experience. So you might give an option of sorts as to how they can modify it if you see it comes up. If you can't breathe. Okay. Miguel, we just went through shoulder stand and plow now. I'm going to talk everyone through it. Of course, if you know these are poses you don't like practicing and you don't want to do it, that's obviously fine. Otherwise, we'll give it a practice and then see how it goes. So from lying on our back, we'll move into plow. Have the hands supporting. So I'm going to demonstrate it one more time just to show the guard, and you guys can watch as well. In fact, even in a class, it's good to demo it and watch because you don't want your students to move their head when they're in the pose. Okay? So plow pose, coming to lie on my back, my legs are extending up. All right? I use a little bit of momentum. Feet go up overhead, hands support the hips. Okay? Maybe I'm staying with my feet slightly up. Maybe they're moving down towards the floor, depending on you. Okay? Squeezing the elbows towards one another, kind of retracting the shoulders, getting the elbows nice and close in. Okay? And then from shoulder stand, I can lift my legs up, maybe walk my hands up, supporting. I like to have my fingers pointing up, but you can kind of grab the outside of the hips. And then my legs extend up. Keep gazing up at the toes. If I move my feet slightly away from me, more weight moves onto the backs of the arms. If I move them slightly up and take more of an upright position, you may feel the weight shift more towards the upper back of the neck. Okay? To come out, I send my feet down back into plow. Hands come down onto the floor, slowly roll down. And then when you come here, you can just have knees to chest or take an active rest. Okay, so take it slowly, take it gently on yourselves. Let's see how it goes. Okay, keep your gaze up towards yourself, even online. Don't look towards the screen. If you're uncertain, come out of the pose and then we can chat. Okay, so you come to lie on your back, legs up towards the ceiling. Use a little bit of momentum to lift the hips. Okay, feet go up overhead. Hands onto your lower back. Okay. Nice. So once you get your hand onto your back, find a little bit of a wiggle. Get that shoulder retraction or scapular retraction. Try to walk the elbows underneath the body. You can do that with a wiggle or maybe interlacing the fingers as I did earlier. Okay. Nice. You're also hands onto the back. Good. Squeeze your elbows in, so get your elbows nicely retracted under the body. Okay? And then check in there. Maybe you want to feel what it's like to have the feet down. What does it feel like to have the hips lifted? All right? What does it feel like to shift the weight slightly further away? Keep gazing up at your feet, please, down. So you're moving the hips maybe further away from you, maybe more towards the face. So move slowly and steadily. If you would like to move into shoulder stand, bring your hands onto your lower back, kind of wiggling those elbows in underneath the body. Good. You can bend the knees or you can extend them all the way up towards the ceiling. Good. And you may feel here, what does it feel like to bring the feet a little bit more towards the elbow side, so away from the face? Do you feel that the body's nice and upright? Or are you maybe taking the hips slightly further back? Once again, different ranges here. Nice. And then to slowly come out, you take your feet down to plow, hands on the mat, fingertips act as a brake, and you'll slowly roll down to lie. Take a moment in your lying position. And then when you're ready, you can come up to seated. Do we have any questions about shoulders down? Yeah, so once again, so if you look at the picture, they've got their legs straight up, but I know that maybe it's different for you. So I also know that if you move the body in a certain way, maybe that feels better in terms of the weight on the upper back, maybe the neck, maybe that sensation feels better for you. So it is something to explore with, and to know that each person in the studio also has a different shape in the legs.
So just being on your shoulders with your legs up.
So,
you can get.
Well, for me, actually, I don't put my feet down on the floor and plow. I don't know. My hamstring flexibility is fine. So that actually feels the best for me. Because as soon as I roll forward, there I shift more weight onto my neck. So for me, that feels nice. And I'm actually supporting my hips. I can let my feet still come down pretty low. You see? Oh, there they are. But do you see my hips are back?
Yeah.
If I lift my hips up, that's more. Okay, so I've actually chosen to lean back slightly because it feels better for me. The same thing with if I show the shoulder stand here. Do you see how far my hips are from my shoulders? You see there? That's a little bit straighter.
Yeah.
But that feels slightly better. So it's once again that shifting into the weight, because you guys all see that in terms of moving hips. That just felt better for me. So we know there's an exploration into it, especially for students if they're coming into this for the first time. It's not a common position for us to put our bodies in other than your.
That's a good question. So Chris is just saying whether you go from this just go with the pose.
Yeah, I think with regards to inversions and menstruating, it's a personal thing. It's not, I think. Yeah.
Really?
So it's a very common thing that we often hear in Ilinga is that if you're menstruating, to not take an inversion. And I think that comes from different reasons as to possibly looking at the philosophy of like more energetic, subtle body side of things, flow of energy. But from a physical point of view, it depends on you. It's also going to do with some people use the kind of explanation of like maybe it's energy levels, flow of circulation, whatever the case may be. But in terms of your students, it's completely up to them. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. So I wouldn't use it as a precautionary thing to say if you are menstruating, don't. I would say if you would like to offer it, because it's ultimately it's a personal decision.
Yeah.
It never bothered me as much whether I did it or not. So each to their own. Thank you. Okay. All right. Any questions about shoulder stand and plow? Good. Okay. Like Amy said, she loves it. Cool. Works for Amy, she found when it works for her, and so that's fine. Amy said she can sleep in her shoulder stand, okay? So now we just know how to teach it, how we can adjust it. Students say, oh, it doesn't feel good for me. I used to do plow and say, oh, that doesn't feel good for my neck. And teachers would give some sort of advice. You might just say something to say, just don't go as far. You can lift your hips up and let your hips go back. Okay. But it's nice to know that before they come into the boat, otherwise tell them to come out, give the cue, and otherwise they're doing all sorts of things with their head. Okay. So just know that for plow, we do require a lot of hamstrings and spinal rotation. No, spinal flexion. Okay. Next up, we're going to go into headstand. Okay. So the same thing, the headstand we showed you guys is almost a headless headstand. We have an interlace of the hands, and we said you can either have the head free, or you can have almost the head resting on almost the wrists of sorts, but the head's not on the floor. Okay. So once again, now we're going to look at headstand with the head on the floor, the more traditional way that we do headstand. And there's two different types. Okay, supported headstand, where my fingers are interlaced. Once again, there's two different ways that people practice it. They can have an interlace of the fingers, palms touching, and they rest on the back of their head. My head's on the floor. Okay. The way I prefer it, and this will be completely up to you, you have found that if you do practice headstand, you've learned one way or the other, is to part the hands, and the hand almost cups the back of the head like this. Okay, that's how I'm. So that's supported headstand, and I have my forearms on the floor, and because I have my weight on the floor, it's not so much in terms of strength. Okay, it's a little bit of skill, maybe kind of the skill of balancing as well, because the orientation and up to down. And to get into the pose, if you're lifting one leg at a time, a little bit of hamstrings required, the same as what if we're doing handstand. In order to take one leg up, we require a bit of hamstrings to do that. Okay. So the second one is tripod headstand, which is where we have the hands kind of out like this, almost in chaturanga arms, and then the elbows are just above the wrists. Okay. So two different variations for headstand. And what was the other thing I was going to say? In terms of once you learn headstand, I think in Catherine's video, it becomes quite easy in terms of there's not much trick to it rather than just getting it. It's not much strength involved in terms of getting up because I'm just balancing on my head, as opposed to the headless headstand where I require shoulder strength because I'm a push. Okay. Is there anyone here who hasn't practiced headstand before? Quite a couple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And is that because you haven't learned it or you just weren't interested? Haven't learned it. How do you feel, Shara? No. I haven't learned it. Oh, I haven't learned it. Okay, so the general sense is we haven't learned it. Okay. So we've spent some time doing headless headstand. That's obviously our preferred way of doing it, but let's show it to you now. It's going to feel quite different because now because I put my head on the floor, got a lot more weight on my head. Okay. So let's show you guys the two ways to get into it. You are, of course, welcome to move your mat to the wall if you'd like to try it out. You don't have to go all the way up. You might just feel the head placement. What does it feel like to lift one leg up? How does that sensation feel? How does the pressure feel? Is it okay? Fine. If it's not, cool, headless headstand. Okay. So if I do regular bound headstand, this is the one that I prefer. I know Catherine's the opposite. So I'm going to move my mat slightly closer because I want you guys to. Okay. So with my bound headstand, I'm going to create a little interlace with my hands, and I stack my pinky fingers on top of one another because if I put one, then it gets a little bit crushed. Okay, so my fingers are stacked. I bring the top of my head. Some students prefer it a little bit more forward. Some prefer it on the top. Some a little bit more back. Okay, I think it also comes down to the shape of your head. I have a really flattish head at the top, so it's helpful. Okay, so I interlace my fingers. I just bring my elbows into a comfortable position. Have you seen how some teachers will grab opposite elbow do that? That's not really like a one size fits all. All right. Once again, it depends. If you've got shorter arms, that might feel a little bit too wide. Maybe even slightly narrower in order to find that stability. For me, it's kind of been elbows sort of in line with shoulders has been a good fit for me. But once again, it might be slightly different for you because of your dimensions and also the different variation you take. Okay, so we've covered all that. Got my hand on the floor. Top of the head comes down to the mat. I tuck my toes. My head's on the floor. I don't know if you guys can see. It's off. Yeah. Okay. I'm gazing down. Different ways to come into it. Maybe one leg. Maybe the other. Okay. So you could hang out here. You could come up with two legs. That requires you to kind of rock back a little bit more. If I push into my elbows, watch there. Ooh, a little bit balance. Okay. So that's the one variation to do it. For me, that you've been practicing for a while, it's not very challenging in terms of strength requirements, just balance. Any questions about that one? I came up with one leg. For me, it feels fine because I've been doing it for a long time. Besides that, I haven't done them in a while. I just do the headless headstand one. For me, I think my dimensions work in my favor because I can push into my elbows and get a little lightness on my head. Catherine's shoulders or arms, even with lifting up her head is like this much higher than her forearms. So she gets a lot more weight on her head. So that might feel different. So I think your arm variations, proportions play a role. For me, I find a gentle little push into my arms makes a little bit of lightness in my head. And I'm using a little bit more strength, but not as much as Headless Headstand. But for me personally, that feels fine, but it's not very challenging in terms of strength. So, but doesn't feels better than shoulder stand for me. Okay. So that's the one. You can come up with two legs where you kind of float your legs up at the same time. Requires me to rock my weight back a bit. You guys seen that?
No.
I'll try. I haven't done it in a while. Let's see how this goes. Here is a thing.
Yeah.
It's like, so for shoulder stand, you wanted a bun here, and for headstand, you wanted here.
Yeah.
So you can't do both in the same spot. I'm going to choose your hairstyle. Braid it. Yeah, he needs to be more So I'm going to. You see how back I have to send my hips in order to come up. I paused there and I couldn't get up. So I've got to send my hips all the way back, and that takes more load forward in order to lift up.
And the risk of actually falling over the back.
Takes
which
a
happens
lot
to me
more
a few times,
control.
and then you feel it on your neck.
Yeah, I think also the one, if you, with hamstring flexibility, in terms of getting the one leg up here, okay, look how close I walk my feet at first. So that requires hamstring.
That's something in your core intensity as well.
So there my top leg's kind of in line. So it makes it easier to lift because I've got my one leg up to seesaw. So if my hamstrings were slightly more restricted and I couldn't walk them in as much, I may require a little bit of a jump. Now I'm jumping with my head on the floor, and so there's a bit more momentum. So that's another factor to weigh in. You can come in with knees bent, where you stack like this. I know my friend prefers it this way, one, then the other, and then you come up. Knees come up, and feet come up. Okay. Another way to come in. Cool. Okay. I'm going to show you the second variation. Then it's up to you whether you want to try it or not. You can just observe. You might want to just practice a headless headstand against the wall. Okay? The next one, I'm going to use a foam because my head pressure on the floor doesn't feel nice. So it's actually more just like the hardness of the floor. Okay. So tripod headstand was for me the first inversion I learned, which now looking back is like, whoa. So tripod headstand, I've got my head and my hands on the floor, kind of in like a chaturanga arm shape. Okay. For some students, it's a lot easier. For some, it's a bit trickier. It's up to you. Has anyone done this variation before?
No.
No. Huh. What an amazing time together. Okay. Where did you do this before? In like a
this one.
yeah.
Actually, like I learned it because I was trying to from the crowd to get to it.
That's what I was going to say. Yes. So this variation is often taught when moving between. So Iyengar does this a lot. I've seen a video where he's flicking all over the place. He comes up into a tripod headstand, drops his knees onto his upper arm so he can transition into crow and side crow. So often used as I learned it as a transitional pose because my head is on the floor, my hands are down here. There's less support than if my hands are holding. Okay, so I often learned it as a transition pose, but I know other people do it a lot as well. Okay, so how tripod works is I bring the same thing, my head, crown of the head on the floor. Okay, my hands come underneath my shoulders, my feet walk in. I push into my hands. You see there, they can relax. There's the push. One leg up, other leg up.
Physiologically, it looks a little bit easier.
I was just thinking the same.
It does look easier. So you
I
can
now ask which is more difficult.
Sure.
Is that the one you might come into from a wide-legged forward fold if you
Yes. Well, from a wide-legged forward fold, students often, because when you take your prasarita, you come here. So this is where head on the floor is essential. Hands here, but then you're entering from a wide-legged, and then this is not either. Then you're entering, here's my color.
Okay.
And down.
So this is the one,
It looks very nice.
this is the one teachers often cue when they say come up into headstand, they mean that. So I think you'll gravitate towards one or the other in terms of what works for you. I do find this one easier, but my hands need to work. They can't be relaxed. I need to have a gentle push
Which
on my
one do
hands.
you find easier? This one?
Both of them feel the same for me.
As the one with
But I learned this one first.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned that one first. I don't know. Well, we're gonna try each one out.
Which one would you
Then,
Like where do you feel like you're, because my issue, my hamstrings aren't long, so I have to give a little bit of a
yeah. So I think it's tricky because I would part them as the same for me as my experience in my body. But I'm going to give you the opportunity now to try them. You don't have to come up. So what you can do is you can interlace your fingers, place your head on the floor, walk yourself into a down dog, and then just feel. Can I push? How does it feel like to have my weight on my head? If it's your first time doing it, this is enough. If maybe I want to bring my, see there, I've kind of brought a little bit more forward on my head. There it's on the top of my head. What does it feel like to have one leg up and down? And then when you've had enough, go enough. You don't have to come up. I just want you to feel how it feels different to headless headstand. And maybe then try the one with the tripod. You can sit your mats up against the wall. You don't have to kick up. If you're uncertain, you can call me too, and we'll just have a look. Okay. Any questions about headless headstand and tripod? I think rather come this side, because your face a bit of a side. What I'm going to ask is I'm going to ask the people online to go up, and then I'm going to ask you guys to go up, and then you guys to go up, then we'll go again. So I'm very mindful of everyone going up into a headstand at the same time. But I also want you guys to watch each other and see what options others may be taking. If you're super happy in the center of the room, you can do it. If you prefer the wall, do the wall. Someone can sit up there. Yeah, short edge of the mat towards the wall, but let's see online first. Are you guys going to be trying it?
Yes, but I don't dare to do it. I mean, I want to do it next to the wall only.
You do want to do it next to the wall?
Yes, but next to the wall.
Yeah, go ahead with it. So try and just take it slowly. So take it step by step, interlacing your fingers. So Lorata, are you happy doing it at the center of the room? Are you happy? You've done it before. I don't want you to fall over because I'm not there.
Yeah.
So if you, look, you may be super happy doing it in the center of the room, which is fine. But if it's your first time or even second time, then you can head up. Okay. I would even say, Cheryl, your hands slightly further back and in line with your shoulder. Well, actually, once again, that's what I would cue, but it might not feel as good for you. So the hands are a little bit wider and closer. Okay. So take a very short downward dog and then walk your feet in closer, Nagar. Closer, closer, closer. Good. And then just lift one leg up. Just feel what it's like to have that weight on your head. Good. Straighten that top leg, Lorato, nice active leg. Good, that's close. You might have to give a little bit of a hop. And Lorato, Nigar, I want you to feel, try the both legs inversion. Because that bottom leg bends slightly. Do you remember that one where I tucked one knee in and then the other?
No.
So, I'm gonna see. So you can come up with like the top leg being bent or the top leg being straight. It depends on you. But you naturally bend the bottom leg. So sometimes doing one like this, where I'm placing my head and I'm walking in close and then bring one knee in, squeeze it in.
Ah, I see. Okay.
It's actually does feel a little bit harder because I need to bring my hips up. But I'm just thinking in terms of trying it out there. But you will need to step your feet in a lot closer. You need to get hips above. Yes, yes, yes. Now bring one knee in. Good. Set your hips back. There. Do you feel? Okay, now push your heels into the door, get your bum off the wall. Yes, and then you can squeeze the legs together, take one leg off the, yes. And then if you want to, you can try and bring the other leg to squeeze. Engage the inner thighs. Nice, how did that feel?
Good, but the moment I took off the second leg, I lost my balance.
That's fine. That's fine. You're working with it. So what happened with Nagar is, in order to come up, she needs to get her hips above her. You need to get your hips above your shoulders. So when you were kicking one leg up, your hips weren't stacked yet. So then you kind of have to kick further. By just doing that double knee inversion, it's actually pretty hard. But then she tilted back and got her hips on the wall. So for you, because I know you were quite scared the last time, it got you upside down. Which in itself is a pretty cool victory. Well done. So, but it did kind of help to get that tilt going. But if you had your head off the floor, it would be challenging because it requires quite a bit of core to squeeze into that teeny little ball.
Yeah.
But you can play around with that just to get the hips up and then maybe straight leg and getting up. How did that feel, Angela and Lorato? Oh, Angela's always frozen. Good. I saw Ange get up. How did that go, Lorato? I saw the one leg go up. Cool. If you guys want to go on this side, you can go. I'm going to come to you guys now.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult.
It is tricky, but how did you get up in the headless headstand? Pretty easier because you get the kick.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm afraid to put the weight of my head, and it's not so comfortable on my arms as well. So I don't know what to do.
And that's fine. If you like the headless headstand one and you get up, that's great. You can totally do that one. Just going to turn the camera here so we can see. Okay, same thing for you. Nice. Same thing for you, Anna. Yeah. Don't be afraid to bend your knees.
I feel like I had like this, like going.
Yeah.
There's normal feeling.
Yeah. So if your top of your head is on, you will feel like you're kind of tucking your chin to your chest. Some people like it more on the forehead, which is also totally fine. So Inka, your hands are here instead of there. So you want to make a triangle. So if I was placing my head, I'm making a triangle between my head and my arms. So it's kind of like chaturanga arms. So not in line with my head.
Okay.
And Anna, does it feel better like that to have your elbows quite wide?
I mean, I can feel that with
I think you're too close to the wall.
probably.
So just give yourself, just put your hands there. See what it's like to have your elbows slightly in. I just think just try it. Head on the floor. Okay, tuck your toes up your hips. Walk your feet in. Good, lift one leg up. Good. You're a little bit too close to the wall, so you might want to bring your knees into your chest. We want to go closer to the wall, but we need space. It's a little bit better in here, but I still think a little bit too close.
It feels way comfortable when my hands are.
Oh, there? Then try this one. I just want you to try it. I think you're still too close. So let that come. So I would almost set up probably at least 2 hands away from the wall. It's going to feel far, but it's not that far because your legs are going to go up quickly. Okay, for you guys, if you want to check that side too, you can go ahead. Try whichever one works for you. Anna, your elbows just come up. So it's like I said to most of you guys, it's fine to have your elbows wide, but I don't know if it feels like it gives you a lot of support that way, as opposed to this.
It'll be on here.
But that's fine. I want you to play around with it.
Yeah.
Generally, we teach elbows in line with shoulders because then I'm kind of stacking my joints.
Secondly, there's a fear factor. Because
It is. But if you want to try what Nagar did, just bringing the knees in, you don't take the feet up.
How do you do that in this?
So if I put my knees in,
And then when the other one, I mean, and then you go up the same way here, move your knees first, and then you go.
okay, tilt your hip back so you can walk in a little bit more. Yeah.
You
You just need to bring your hips a little bit further back, so you might have to walk in a little bit more. Walk. Yeah, it's a hamstring thing as well. So for you, you can. So for you, it's that hips above the shoulders thing. I'm talking my legs straight and walking further. And then also further, I need to be further away from the wall. And then there's more fear.
It always got me to the impression that you will hurt my neck a lot more.
Okay, so, okay, what you're doing is like, I'm just having you guys watch here so you can also see everyone else in the studio. So you got 2 options. Okay, listen, just keep it quiet. Everything we watch is also a learning opportunity for us and our students. So just have a watch here, please. Okay, so I just want to show you, so what Yvette was doing, which is not, it's not wrong, it's just different. So she actually had her hands in line with her ears like this, and she had her head down. What does this look like?
Yeah.
Except it actually makes it harder on your shoulder. So I'm not surprised you couldn't get up. So pincher is like this. Pincher, my head is off the floor. Okay? Headless headstand is like this. Head is off the floor. Very similar to pincher, it's just different hands. Okay? Headless headstand is either like that. Headstand is either like this or like this. Okay. So if you want to do the tripod version, bring your hands down into chaturanga, okay, where my hands would be, and then I kind of make a triangle. My head goes at the top of the triangle. Okay. So you can try that one out, and that go in.
First time I've done a triangle and it was as easy as.
Yeah.
as normal, yeah.
Something different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tripod.
Good. So you might have to bring your hands a little bit back. It's going to feel tricky. Okay, cool. Now place your head down onto the block. Okay, tap your toes. Lift your hips. Okay, now just check because your forehead is kind of half on, half off. It is a bit tricky. You don't have to come, you don't, okay? I want you to walk your feet to toes first. So bring your hips above. Good. Then you can send one leg up, 3-legged dog. Now you do a little now you feel with your arm placement. Yeah, try that one,
You got it. Oh, beautiful.
Yes,
It's nice.
Okay, any questions about? Yes. I'm gonna cut you down a bit so there's something. Okay, let's have a look. That's so cool. Lift one leg up. Are you scared? Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
trust
it's got a third point.
Okay, push down this leg.
So much.
Take your leg up to walk. Up with that little leg. Yes, so take one leg down. Yeah. Okay. How you guys feel on the head?
Okay.
It feels better on the cushion because it's a little bit softer.
I'm listening to you.
I did it. Did it? Okay, good. So if you guys saw, where I mean we don't do the adjustments in, but in terms of your case, you just needed a little bit of a help up, and she got up nice. And she could do it up against the wall, could feel it, was there for a second, said, "Cool, thanks. Sorry, online people, you're facing the wrong direction." Okay. All right. So pretty much what Ella was doing now is she had the tripod headstand, and she lifted the one leg up. It wasn't quite enough, so I just guided her gently up to the wall. Wouldn't recommend it in terms of if you didn't know the students weren't familiar with the headstand in terms of adjusting already. But she got up, and then after 2 seconds, she was like, "Hey, I want to come down," and then gently up and down, and then yay, she got into a headstand.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any questions about headstands, headless headstand, inversions?
I have one question. So for me, the pressure on my head is really too much. I feel like it's not, it feels really unhealthy to me. I don't know. Is there anything you can do about it?
So in terms of supported headstand, it's quite tricky because I need to have my hands down, so I can't put a foam or cushion without it interfering with my forearms that need to be on the floor. So what some in the studio did now in terms of tripod is we've got little foams like this, and they put their head on a foam, because sometimes it's not pressure in the neck in terms of weight. Sometimes it's literally like pressure on the head. So a cushion like this helps, a small cushion. Sometimes folding a blanket helps just to cushion the head, but really only helpful for tripod where I've got my forearms down on the floor. Double stacking your mat a couple of times so that you're supporting both your forearms and your head or something. I mean, you might even try doing it on a blanket where if you were doing this variation, both your head and your forearms are supported. It also takes some getting used to in terms of the more you do headstand, it does help. But for some of us, headless headstand just feels way better and more accessible.
Is it fine if you really push through your forearms and like push through your shoulders, your head doesn't lift off the mat, but it just releases that pressure like ever so slightly.
So Amy's also saying if you're in the shape and then you do like kind of a little pushing the forearms into the floor, then you're using a bit of shoulder strength to take the pressure off, but you're not lifting the head up. In fact, some may transition from this into pincher, but that's a whole different story.
So the one is called tripod, and what's the other one?
This is just supported headstand.
Supported.
Yeah. So Sirsasana is headstand, supported Sirsasana, and then this is tripod, and then you've got headless headstand, which doesn't have a Sanskrit name because we made it up. Yeah. It's not. It's actually it's like a headstand pincher option.
The pincher, you don't have any tips on it. You have any tips?
For pincher? So for pincher my rice, now while we're here, we can quickly go over it.
Trying to work.
I'm gonna try and do it in the center of the room, but I might make it all with my shoulders. So the thing with pincher is I've got my arms into a dolphin shape lifting up. So what a lot of people struggle with is this. Elbows move in. And yeah, so if my hands move in, my shoulders buckle out. So I might not be able to come up and I'll move up into the wall. So in terms of that, I need a lot of, I don't want to do too much flexibility because I also require a lot of stability if I was prepping for it. So hands with blocks is really helpful. And so this kind of like, I put my hands like this, racing between my forefinger and my thumb. And the same thing with pincher, I place my elbows down and then I try to lock them in. I gaze down, okay? Same thing, my gaze is like in between this block I'm creating, all right? Take one leg up. I'm also going to walk in quite a bit, push into my arms. Ooh, I've got a bit of fear.
Let's not hold you one leg.
No. So my thing for me now, I can feel I'm not rocking forward enough. So I need to bring my weight forward and walk in as much and then kick up one leg.
So is
But I
this
think
also hands, headstand?
this is forearm balance. So if you see my forearms are like this.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to show you against the wall, because there's going to be a problem then. So if the same thing with any of these, a lot of it is walking in close enough. So I could feel there, I wasn't walking in enough to get my hips stacked, which means I need to kick harder, and I wasn't kicking enough to stack my hips. Okay, because I need to, the further my hips are not over my shoulders, the more I'm going to have to kick.
So you say you're looking down.
I'm looking there. Slightly forward. Some people like looking up, but that might take me into like more a side extension, which for some people might work better. So if I was doing pincher, I was looking down. You see how, look, I didn't even touch it, but the wall's there.
Yeah.
Okay, and then push. Do you see how I kind of made a little arch? I don't know if you guys can see from because of my shoulder flexion feels a bit tight today. There's a little back bend that happens. Then we have like a little banana shape, which is fine.
So it's the head, like you. So it's a fine if the head.
You can. I think looking to the front, maybe if I was moving more into scorpion, if I was moving into bending the knees and taking that back bend variation. I don't know if you guys can see it there online with the angle, but for me it's just gaze, leaning forward. And it's one of those things you'll find a lot, and I'm kind of experiencing it now. When the wall's not there, I'm scared I'm going to fall. When it comes to the wall, I can do it, but I don't touch the wall.
Yeah.
And you're kind of in this like limbo where you go, I need the wall because mentally, not physically. And that's the hard thing. And then you transition to the room and you go, okay, there's an imaginary wall or something, whatever the case. Okay.
I've got the same issue with headless headstand. Like even with my hand together with my arms just goes to the side of that side and I look like this. It's something pushing onto your arm, like I don't really know what motion do I need to do, what do I have to tell my brain to squeeze those in, how does it work?
So Lily's saying even in headless headstand, your elbows play up. So I've noticed it's a big thing on mats. If my mat is slippery, it's easy to slide. So we did speak previously, I think you were saying about the strap. I, for a very long time, did pincher with the strap around my forearms to lock them in. But I got so used to having it there that when I took the strap away, I couldn't do pincher. And I thought, no, I want to learn how to do it without the strap. It's nice for a sensory feedback, but I still want to learn it without. So what I learned a while back, and it helps me, I kind of place my elbows a little bit narrower, like a millimeter narrower, then I push in, and on my mat, I can't slide out. In order to slide out, I need to take weight off, and one will go, which means one shoulder is taking more weight than the other, which is also sometimes normal if you've got one stronger side. So for me, it's mat makes a difference and also pushing down. Yeah, really getting that. Because you want the weight, sometimes as we come forward, we bring more weight into the hands, lift the weight off the elbows and that's what flares out.
And maybe,
When the shoulder's better, we can explore it a bit. Okay. Are we feeling comfortable that we've experienced it now? We know that we can practice this. If you guys want to use it in your practice, go ahead. All good. Okay. All right. I want to show you guys just two things because we got our pose review tomorrow. And we didn't, just when we did our poses, we got 5 minutes before we did kids yoga. We didn't cover reverse plank and bridge pose, even though we know them from the picture, but just to kind of run over it very quickly because I might ask you to come into this tomorrow. So Uttanasana is reverse plank. You guys might have already included them as a prep pose into some of your sequencing. All right. So I move from legs extended in front of me, hands come along the side of the body, fingers pointing forward. Okay. My shoulders are moving into extension. Okay. And I'm pointing my toes, pushing into my hands, lifting my hips. Depending on your body, you might be able to get the toes on the mat. Okay. I'm also doing a little bit of shoulder retraction, gazing up. Okay. My toes don't touch the floor, some might be able to. It's got to do with your ankle flexibility too. Modification for this would be reverse tabletop. Okay. Really nice in terms of hip opening, shoulder opening, getting into that extension. Also requires a lot of the glute work to get up. In fact, I find the whole body working in this one. Okay, any questions about Uttanasana?
I have a question, but it's a little bit irrelevant, not really. So I saw Jenny Rollins did a transition from plank, and then I could watch this chick now, I don't know how she does it, but she goes from plank, and then very gracefully ends up in like what you do. So I'm wondering if you have any, because I want to do that in my...
So in terms of rotating from plank to Uttanasana, there's a little bit of shoulder, like a lot of shoulder work that happens in there. Because my fingers are pointing in the same direction I need them to be. But if I rotate, I'm going to move off my mat when I do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you see my fingers are pointing away from me? Did she have her fingers pointing towards it? So if I was moving into Uttanasana, I'd have to swap my hands around. Okay, so fingers pointing away, other hand turns, other hand turns back.
Could you do it with your hands facing the other way? Could you just like a small extra little...
You could. If it was a different variation that you wanted to offer, because this in itself is quite tricky for people, you can. You can do it, some people even sometimes do, especially if I'm transitioning and it's already tricky enough for the brain, I tend to not fret so much in terms of the hands, because people will put their hands where they need to be in order to get there. So sometimes if I was moving there, I might have to do diagonal, move my feet, diagonal, diagonal, and then I can come in and readjust. Yeah. This is also a lot tricky for students in terms of fingers pointing towards. They might only be able to do diagonal or away. So just understand that it's in terms of wrist, it requires quite a bit. Okay? Quickly into bridge pose. We've done this one quite a bit, but I just wanted to show in bridge that kind of scapular retraction we just spoke about now. Okay? So bridge is really nice in terms of, well, it's just my favorite pose, to be honest with you. But with a block, not the one where I've got to work. Okay, so if I do bridge pose, I just want to show the other variations as well. So I've got bridge pose where my feet are fairly close towards my sitting bones, hands along the side of the body. Sometimes teachers will say, oh, just so you can gently raise your heels. That's not always a cue that works for everyone, because if my body was a bit tighter, maybe that's as close as I can get there. Especially in terms of the size of your calves, your hamstrings, all of that stuff. So just as close as you can. Generally we cue feet pointing forward, but we know that our glutes are hip extensors and external rotators, right? So for some people to get their hips up, their toes might turn out into external rotation slightly. Okay, it might happen, just the way the body works. All right, so I'm going to lift my hips up, squeeze my glutes. What do we sometimes hear in bridge?
Interlace the fingers.
What do we hear about the glutes? Okay, so you guys have heard that you need to work with glutes. If I relax my glutes, okay, so your glutes need to work to push my hips up. Okay, So here I can see I've got more like kind of a straight line. This is like a nice opening to my hip flexors and quads. If I make it more into kind of that back bending shape, working into my shoulder extension, just like what Cheryl said now, interlace my fingers, I can do a little bit of a wiggle, and you see that lifts my upper body slightly more, and I can interlace my fingers here. Okay. What else can I do here in terms of making it more challenging?
Lift my
Move
legs.
your feet closer to the body.
You can make it closer, it is, but if I was maybe wanting to grab my feet, that would be another variation. If I wanted to step 1 foot up, what would make it easier in terms of skill?
If you want to lift one.
Yeah. Bring the other foot to the center. One-legged bridge. I shouldn't be moving my head. Bad student. Other leg up. Okay. I can also come into a regular bridge. Not do the shoulder retraction, just have my arms overhead. You can do cactus. As long as it feels fine for the neck. Slowly roll down. Okay. So that's just a quick bridge. You don't have to do it with interlaced fingers every time. You can have the arms along the side of the body. Depends what you're doing it for. If you're doing a back bending class and maybe later you need the extension, do it. Okay. Any questions about those two? Yes, Amy.
I thought I'm just looking at the picture in the manual, your knees over your ankles, so your front of your legs are perpendicular to the mat. Hers
Yeah, I
are a
think-
little bit at an angle, does it not matter? Just like ever so slightly, so I always thought they were meant to be. like that.
I think so. Pretty much Amy's asking, must my feet be under my knees so I'm perpendicular?
Yeah,
I think a lot of students won't know where their feet are in terms of their ankle
that's what I
line
always
down.
struggle with, so
Yeah.
I don't know if they are.
If you wanted to be really like specific about it, you could bring your feet. So Amy, step your feet closer in.
Okay.
But I find if you tell students to bring their feet towards the hip and push up, sometimes they do adjust their feet because the closer they are, you'll be able to tell if they're too far, in which it's going to require more. If I was here,
Yeah,
that's requiring a little bit more of my hamstrings in terms of, I mean, you could do this, and that's like my hamstrings are shouting. But essentially, if I bring them in, it just allows me to really push up. Okay. If they were like, I can't see mine. Are they
yours
doing-
are perpendicular, so. Yeah, that's.
If they were there, I don't know if I would necessarily tell them, but this does make it easier in terms of I can push a little bit higher. Okay, you guys have seen Jenny Rawlings' slides on the blanket for your hamstrings? Wowzers, those are hard. Okay, that's more for hamstrings though. In terms of your feet are on your bridge and you slide the feet away from you, eccentrically working hamstrings. Okay, I need to quickly run to the bathroom. I want you guys to just set up on your mats for kids